Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. Thanks for joining us today. Session today, we'll be going over how to get started with visitor management by explaining how you can streamline your visitor management experience with a product we have here within WSD, which is Workplace Visitor Management. So just before getting started, I want to introduce the people that will actually be going through the demo for you today, showcasing the different experiences and then kind of explaining how we configure these experiences. So today on the session, I am joined with Siam Ta'a. She is from our inbound product management team and works on developing the experience around visitor management, kiosk experience, which we'll go through today. Myself, Elizabeth, I'm part of the outbound product management team, and I'll be taking you through some of the pieces of the session. So just before getting started, we will at some stage mention a few items we have as part of enhancements of capabilities we plan on delivering to be able to provide an even better experience to the visitors. So I do want to mention the safe harbor statement, just in case some of these vision items change or in case some of these get delivered at a later date. So I just want to make sure this is under safe harbor. However, what the main focus of the session today is really to showcase what is available out of the box today and how you can get started with that experience. So before getting started, this webinar is brought to you by 360 Exchanges. This is a series of webinars we have throughout ServiceNow where we focus on the different products we have. I do strongly recommend that you scan the QR code that's shown on the screen to really get notified when upcoming events are going to happen, just because we've got a lot packed in specifically for WSD in terms of we have webinars of what's being released, every release. We have webinar deep dives on specific applications, specific products, how to get started with some of those. And at the end of the session, I'll go through some of the events that will also be happening later this month. So I do recommend scanning the QR code to make sure that you're always up to date and you have the latest on the events we're planning. A few housekeeping rules. Please ask any question you might have regarding what you've configured today. If you want to share about where you are today with your visitor management experience, please use the Q&A function. Myself and Siam will be monitoring this to be able to provide answers to it. If it does come at the right time, we will answer some of those live. But if we don't, we'll probably get to you via that Q&A. And if we don't get the chance to respond to your question, we'll make sure to follow up with you. So don't worry, all questions will be answered. When you go through that Q&A, feel free to introduce yourself. We kind of like knowing who we're speaking to, what are the current challenges you're facing, what you're trying to implement. So do share a bit of background. We'd love to get to know you. This session is actually being recorded as is part of that 360 Exchange session of Live on ServiceNow. All of these recordings can actually be then found on the community site where you can go and catch up if you missed anything, or if you want to rewatch it just in case you go through the process and feel like you need a bit more support. After this session, you'll be prompted with a quick survey. Please fill that in. We do really appreciate it. This helps us really understand how we can share value with you, how we can enhance and improve our next sessions. So please make sure that you do that when you leave the session. So the agenda for today, we've got quite a lot of content to go through. We'll be starting off with kind of an overview of visitor management and understanding why this is part of WSD. We'll then go into an instance to really showcase what the experience is like. So explaining to you, first of all, how does an employee interact with the system to be able to invite a visitor to the workplace? We'll then go into how does that experience look like for the visitor? So once they've been invited or not invited, but coming in to self-register, we'll go through that full experience. We'll also show you a brief overview of the reception dashboard to make sure that that persona has all the information of who's planned to come in, who's coming in, who is actually in the building, just so that they can keep track and make sure it's in one location for them to view all of that. We'll then go into some configuration parts. So starting with the kiosk configuration, if you joined some of our latest sessions on Live on ServiceNow, you saw that in the August release, we had this net new capability, which I'll let Siam go into detail as we get to that part. We'll then go over some resources in terms of how can you get started following this session. If you want to start implementing, where can you find resources and guidance on how to achieve this? And then if we have time at the end, we'll go to some of those live Q&A pieces where if you ask questions during the session today, we'll be able to answer those either following up with you via email if we don't get the chance to get to it, or by doing it live to make sure that everyone can get those answers. So just starting off, visitor management. So As you probably all know or do not know yet, I'm just going to give you a brief overview of WSD. We mainly focus on everything related to the employee experience. So we have one full focus on how can we deliver that best experience for the employee within the workplace. So providing them with a way to be able to request services very easily, be able to make reservations, be able to do all of that via desktop and via mobile. We offer the second part of the experience in WSD, which is really around how can I manage my workplace? So this is all around the facility management, managing what spaces I've got, my space hierarchy, how can I optimize my space? How can I make sure that I'm providing that best experience to the employee? However, that we understand within the workplace, we should not just care about the people that work there. We want to make sure that we provide a brand image, an image that reflects on our visitors when we invite them to the workplace. In a lot of organizations, we have multiple visitors coming in for various reasons, and we want to make sure that we're providing the best experience to them. So by doing this, we're actually inviting them to the workplace so the experience starts as soon as they get invited. So this could be via an email, this could be when we register them and they get invited to a specific reservation, that the experience starts there. Then there's the part when they actually show up on site, when they come to the workplace on site, they want to make sure that they provided value. They're provided with a good brand image to make sure that when they leave, they also have a good impression of the organization. So this also goes through some notifications. How can we make sure that we're providing the right information, the right services to those visitors? And how can we make sure it's streamlined so that they don't get lost when they actually show up in the workplace, when they know exactly where to go? But also on the other side of things, how do we make sure that our facility teams, our receptionists, our lobby people actually know really who is in the building, how many people are expected on a specific date? How can we have all of that process within WSD? So what I'm going to show you is I'm going to go into an instance to really show you, first of all, from the employee perspective, what does it look like? What are the actions an employee needs to take to be able to register a visitor, to make sure they get invited for them to come into the workplace. So there's two ways of going about it. An employee can either invite a visitor based on a reservation. This is what I'm going to start off with. The scenario here is, let's say I'm an employee, I'm going into the workplace today, I'm hosting a meeting with some of my vendors or some of my different providers or some specific colleagues that are not from my organization, that could be from a partner organization or a different organization. And what I'm going to do is use the visitor, the reservation experience to really, for one, book my space of where I would like to be, invite my visitors and and add whatever cases in terms of request of catering, in terms of do I need extra support in the room, providing all of that experience within one single outreach from that employee. So just to take a step back, if you're not familiar with WSD, an employee has different ways of making a reservation. They can make a reservation via the portal, they can use the mobile application, they can use Outlook, they can scan a QR code. We have multiple different ways of creating a reservation. And I would invite you to look at some of our documentation or latest webinars to really understand how a reservation can be made. To make it simple and for the purpose of time today, what I'm going to be showing you is from what we call the reservation portal. On my reservation portal, I'm actually selecting the conference room. I'm inviting multiple people, so I want to make sure I've got a big room specifically where all the invitees will actually be able to sit. I'm selecting a specific location. I'm going to be reserving it in building A of my campus in Italy. I can decide to have it for a specific date. So let's say I'm reserving it for today at this specific time. It's going to be a 1-hour meeting. I can decide to have it all day. All of that configuration is part of the reservation management module. So once I've done that, I can search, and I have different options here of viewing different spaces that I can reserve. So very fast forward, I've got the map view, which really provides me an overview of the layout of the floor to facilitate my selection, so showing me in green what spaces are available. I could also decide to say I want a simplistic view of looking at cards, so really understanding how many seats do they have in each of these locations. I can also look at the schedule view, so to make sure that before and after, I know my meeting might go over, so I want to find a room that currently does not have anyone that's booked after me. I can use these different views. Just for the purpose of time, I'll be selecting a specific, the specifically mapped view. So let's say I want to reserve this specific Jamaica meeting room. What I'm going to do is add it to my basket, and in the next step, this is where I'm going to configure really the different options for my reservation. So I can give it a name here. Let's call it meeting with ABC. I can decide if my topic is private. I can say it's a hybrid, so meaning I want to invite some guests, but then I also want some to be hybrid. I can define this by having the provider either a Zoom or Teams link included in the reservation, so people have the option to attend virtually or come in on site. This reservation, I could be making it on behalf of someone else. So let's say right now I'm as a system admin, but let's say I could be making this reservation for Aaron Price, meaning that this would be counted as the host. If I'm inviting visitors, it's important to have the notion of host, which we'll get to shortly when we move on to the visitor experience. It's really important to keep the notion of host. So right now, this meeting's being set up as Aaron is the host. And what I want to focus on today, which is really part of visitor management, is the possibility of inviting external visitors. External visitors, here I get a new pop-up window that invites me to actually be able to log in which visitors I would like to have present for this session. So if I have any previous visitors, if I created any previous records, I'd have the option here to actually select any of these visitors and have the information pre-filled. But just to show you that how this, if you want to log a new visitor, just to show you the purpose of this demo, right now I'm selecting a new visitor. I've got the information included here. So the host is Aaron Price. The location, remember Jamaica is my meeting room. And then I'm going to go about filling out all the information of my visitors. So I can define the visitor type. So let's say this one's a client. I can define if they're VIP or not. VIP could mean they have a specific service when they actually come to the workplace. We want to make sure they've got the best experience and they're very high level in the organization. We need to make sure they've got a specific experience compared to any other visitors. Or I can just go about here. Now I'm just going to fill in the information on my visitor. So I'm going to say Siam is my visitor today, and I'm going to input her information at abc.com. I can also here add a phone number. You can see that these fields are not mandatory. Right now, it's the email address, which is mandatory, because this is what is going to be used to actually send out the notification mentioning that this person has been invited to the workplace. I can also define the title and the organization. If I'd like that information to be input, this is also very important to also show the receptionist has the full detail of who's been invited, any phone number in case they need to reach them while they're on site, and make sure that to understand who's been coming into the workplace. I can add a private note, so this would be only visible for my reception team, saying if it's an all-day session, if we're having lunch during the session, I could add in here that she's allergic to peanuts or something like that, and this will be captured as part of that visitor record. I can then continue by adding preferences. So this is just to notify the reception that this person might require parking. So I can define parking. I can select what specific parking is needed. Let's say they need a normal parking space. And I can define here a number plate just to make sure that this is the right person. So this is just providing the information to the receptionist that can then take action on this. And I can also mention that Siang, when she comes into the workplace, I want to make sure that when she comes in, checks in, we provide her with a Wi-Fi. Once that is done, I'm going to save it and add her to the reservation. So we can see here she's been added. So as soon as I submit my reservation, she would also actually be notified by an email explaining that she has been invited to this specific site. And I can go ahead and add as many visitors as I would like as part of this reservation. So that's one way of inviting the visitor to the workplace. The second option I'm going to show you is without having a specific reservation, I can just say that some external contractors or some clients can just come for a tour of the office. Let's say that this is the scenario. They're coming in for a tour of the office. They're not coming for a specific reservation. I just want to be able to register them so that my organization is aware that these people are expected within my workplace on a specific day. So what I'm going to do right now is not go to my reservation, which I went to previously. I'm going to just select register a guest. Same process as before. If my visitor is known, I will be able to pre-select that information. If they're not known, I'll be requested to actually input that information to make sure all of that is transmitted to my receptionist. So let's say visitor description. I'm going to say here where she's coming on a tour of the workplace. Location, I'm going to have all my locations where I can select a specific, one of my specific workplaces. So let's say she's coming, I'm inviting her to my Seattle location. The host, again, I can define, if I'm doing it for one of my colleagues, I can easily say she's coming to see Aaron Price. Aaron Price is going to be the host. I can define the arrival time. So let's say she's coming tomorrow. I want to make sure she's coming at 8. Let's say she's coming at 8 o'clock. And she'll be leaving on that same day at, let's just change the time. Let's put 5 p.m. she will be leaving on that same day at 7 p.m. So that's the expected arrival and departure time. I could have easily just said she's coming for an all-day session, or I could say she's coming only for 2 hours. It's really to provide that information to the receptionist so that they really understand it. But at the same time, this is also going to notify my visitor that they have been registered and they have been invited to the workplace, not to a specific reservation. They've been invited to come into the workplace and they are a known visitor. Once again, I can add notes here to the receptionist saying if there's anything specific, if there's any specific behavior that needs to be done by the team when that person arrives, I can input it here so it's captured in that visitor record. On this file, what I can actually do is define a co-host. So let's say Aaron Price, I know this visitor is coming to see them. However, Aaron Price is going from meeting to meeting to meeting. And even though they're the host, they might not have the time to walk down to reception as soon as this visitor arrives. So what I can have here is a co-host. Let's say Aaron Price is a VP, he has an assistant. I can put the co-host as the assistant. So they're also notified as soon as the visitor arrives that one of them two has to come and collect the visitor at the reception. And what I'll then be doing here is actually defining who are my visitors. So I can add one visitor, I can add multiple visitors within this same request. So what I'm going to do here is just show you how to add one of the visitors. So I can select if they've come for a prior visit, they will know exactly who are my visitors. I could actually select, and that would pre-fill the information. Or if they've never come to my workplace, since I didn't save the one earlier, I can actually here register that same person and say she's coming for it's friends and family. She's coming for a tour of the office. siam.taha@abc.com. Again, the email is mandatory just to make sure that we can send the information to the specific visitor that where they need to go. So which location have they been invited to, and how we can have that communication going with them. We then have the option to, just like on the reservation page, is being able to add the visitor phone number if requested. I can also add the organization. Again, this is really for my reception team to have all the information that is required for them to make sure they welcome them in the right way. I can also define here, just like I could on that registration via the reservation, I can also say they need a parking space, input the license plate, say that they're VIP, mention they need the Wi-Fi. So all of that is really captured and shown to the reception team as soon as those people come to the workplace. So once I've done that, it's really going to just trigger them and send them that information. What I can also do within the same registration is not only invite visitors, but perhaps an employee which is part of my organization, but is from a different campus or different location. I can also go ahead here and just in a similar way of my visitors, I can actually input them here and mention that they are expected within my workplace, they've been invited, and in the same way, they would receive the notifications to make sure that they show up on the site on that day. So that was a really fast overview of 2 ways of actually registering, inviting a visitor to the workplace and making sure all of that information is captured so that the receptionist actually expects people to the workplace and has an understanding of, we're expecting 15 people, 20 people today, really understanding who's coming and the details linked to those people. So what I'm going to do now is hand it over to Siam really to impersonate a visitor and go through the experience that would provide.
Thank you, Elizabeth. Hi, everyone. So I'm Sam. I'm part of the product team, and I own the kiosk and visitor experience. So before I get into the kiosk experience, we just wanted to show you a little bit what the experience for a visitor could be. So first, they receive the invitation, whether it's through reservations, as Elizabeth just showed, or just an employee registering a guest. If it's through reservations, they do need to accept the invitation or decline. If they accept, then they receive the policies to also acknowledge via email beforehand, and then this is when they can enter the building. Recently, in our August release, we introduced a walk-up kiosk experience to enable those visitors to self-check-in or self-register, and this is where we'll focus our demo and configuration today. They will, once checked in, will then wait for their host to be picked up or go pick up their badge from the reception if that's a requirement. And then we also introduced, after they're done with their day, a checkout experience directly from that same kiosk. So I will start sharing my screen. Elizabeth,
Yeah, go ahead.
take over. So this is the type of email that we get today. Oh, hold on, my bad.
We're not seeing it.
Yeah, sorry, I was not sharing the right screen. Step 2. Is it okay now?
Yep.
All right, so this is the kind of confirmation email that guests are receiving after they were registered by an employee. So you have the confirmation, the time of the meeting, the subject, and we have introduced by default a passcode. This passcode is obviously used to make it easier for the visitor to actually check into the building. So what I'll do now is I'll move on to the kiosk experience to show what it's like for an employee. And then second part, we will look at the configuration. So let's say I want to check in. So this is my kiosk homepage. This is what I've configured. So now as a visitor, I did receive that invitation and now I want to check in. So I'm just gonna walk up to the kiosk and hit that check-in button. I do have several options to check in, again, configured by my admin. So the first option here is passcode, but we can also go with check-in with an email, with a phone number, and also with a name. In my case, I'm already registered. I have received the passcode, so I can use that passcode for check-in. So I will just enter the numbers. And it pulls up my visitor registration record. So I'm here to see Able Tutor. My name is James Smith. I come from ServiceNow. This is my email and time of visit. If I agree, if those details are mine, then I can just continue. Next step, the experience is asking me to acknowledge the policies. So I can just read through these, and when I'm ready, I just hit acknowledge. And the last screen is just showing me what's next. In this case, host is on their way. Collect your visitor badge from the reception. So it's telling me to go to the reception. And then just a quick reminder, do not forget to check out when you leave. So this is the default experience for what we call an expected visitor, somebody who has received an invitation and who had the passcode or could have used their name also. Now, maybe I'm joining with Jane, but myself, I know I didn't get an invitation. I'm not registered, or at least I think I'm not registered. So I'll just hit the check-in button. I'll just enter my name. So I'll go with Elizabeth. I'll return the favor, Elizabeth. So I'll go with Elizabeth Bowling, continue. Looks like there's no invitation under my name. Maybe I wasn't aware, maybe there was one, but I enter my name, there's nothing. So I'm gonna start registering my visit. I'm gonna start to fill in my information. So reason for purpose for visit. We do have a bunch here. We're just gonna select contractor, for instance, continue. I'm gonna enter my first name, Elizabeth, and then Bowling. This data is retained, not for the name for now. It is retained if you use the email address to try to authenticate yourself. Then it gets pre-populated, but the name has to be re-entered for now. Enter your company. Well, she works for ServiceNow. Enter your email address, Elizabeth.Bowling. Go with gmail.com. I'll continue. Phone number. That's not a mandatory step, but you can also enter your phone number and then select the host. So I can look through my instance. I have several hosts. We'll say Able Tutor is my host. So this is who I'm here to see. I want them to get notified. And I can continue. Reason for visit, contract review, for instance. Continue. And now I do get this recap page. I don't know if you noticed, but you had a stepper all along so that the user is not lost and just thinking, oh my God, this is going to take forever. So there's a stepper just to guide them through the process. And then you do have the different steps. So you can confirm that this is indeed your email address so that you get that email notification also with your passcode and the information, able tutor and etc. So if I agree with all the information here, I can just hit continue. I do have the policies to acknowledge once again. And then I get to the same step. I'm checked in, post is on the way. If I go back to my instance now real quick, here, and if I go into, I'll just go into the outbox just to show you. Now I should have Elizabeth here bowling that just registered a visit. And this is the email that she received right after where she's supposed to meet. So this is the email that she just received. With the passcode that can be used later for checkout, for instance. So we can write it down. So those are the two experiences we have for today for check-in. It's either with an expected visitor or unexpected. In this case, they have to register themselves. Last is the checkout experience. We do know that most people won't check out, but again, this is something we offer, and that should be made available to users nevertheless. So we can reuse a bunch of ways. There's the same ways that we use to check in can be reused for checkout. So again, passcode, checkout with your name, email. So we can switch. We already looked at passcode. Let's try now with checking out with your name. Let's take Elizabeth, who just checked in. She can just enter her name. I'm Elizabeth Bowling. Is just again pulling out your data. This is you, yes, and then check out, and then that's it, and we're done. So this is the flows that we have today available out of the box for check-in and check-out. I'll hand it over back to Elizabeth, and then we'll go into the configuration.
Perfect, thank you very much, Sam. So I know I was going on a lot about the receptionist can see all the information. They need to understand who's currently in the workplace, who's planned, who's intended to come into the workplace, who's been invited. So what we have out of the box is a dashboard. So just like in everything in ServiceNow, all of this can be configured, but what we've delivered as part of workplace visitor management is really this dashboard to understand and to provide the receptionist with a way of tracking all this information. So I have the option here. I'm just going to go to my filters. I'm currently in Workplace Central. Just going back one step, in Workplace Central within my workplace dashboards, I have this option to show my visitor reception. So I'm just on my visitor reception. I can edit any of these graphs that are currently shown, any of the data that's currently input, but I'm going to explain to you what some of these values mean. So right now I've selected one specific location. I've only applied the London office. So let's say I'm a receptionist within this London office. I really want to understand today who's planned, who's expected to be coming into the workplace. So meaning who's been registered, who's intended, who of my employees actually invited to come into the workplace. I have 7 of them. I know that I've got 11 that are currently checked in. So you can see that 7 were expected, but I currently have more. So this goes back to the experience that Sam also shared, where someone can come in and do a self-registration, where they're perhaps coming in for an event, making sure that when they come in, they're actually counted and registered with their name. I have the full information. I can click on any of these and get the data. I can also really see specifically, let's say there's an incident, let's say people have gone out for lunch, let's say a lot of things can happen. People can go on breaks, and making sure that they actually enter or exit the building, I can also get that data. So really looking here, I can see that out of the people that are currently checked in, I've got 6 of them that are out on the break. They haven't checked out, but they are either on a coffee break or out for lunch or doing something outside the workplace. This could either be because they were going out for lunch, so they left their badge at the reception. This could mean different ways on how you capture this information. I've got 4 of my visitors that have actually checked out. So this could also be they've given their badge back to reception, so receptionist checked them out, or they walked up to the kiosk and did the checkout themselves. And I can also see that here I did have 3 extra planned visits. However, the employee actually cancelled the registration, or the visitor said they won't be coming in. So making sure that we capture that information of they won't be attending the workplace today. I can also here get an information on when are my visitors actually expected to arrive within my workplace. So this is going back to either the reservation or the registration part, where I can actually define what time of the day are they expected. Are they expected to come all day? Are we expect them to arrive at 9 o'clock, or are they expected for a 1-hour session in the afternoon? I can really track that when I make the registration. So this also is captured for the receptionist, so they can get a rough idea of when people are intended to come, just in case then they can monitor saying, oh, we've got 20 people that are actually coming at 3 p.m. We want to make sure that the badges are printed. We want to make sure that we have that there's the cleaner that's not in the hallway, that we want to make sure that we're providing that experience to them. So giving them that visibility so that they can plan ahead and make sure they're providing a good experience. So then if I scroll down, we've got the breakdown. So as I said, we can click on any of these to view the information, but I can also scroll down from this dashboard to actually view the different information of different people that have been invited. So you can see here people, some people have been invited actually for the entire day. Some people have been invited for specific times, and this is what is reflected within the dashboard. So I can view all of my different information, update it, make edits, change the different columns that I want, and then really be able to have the view that I need to make sure that I'm doing my work correctly, making sure that I'm not missing anything out, and making sure that we are providing that experience to them. As a receptionist, so if an organization doesn't have the kiosk in place, they can actually use this dashboard to be able to check in visitors. So if you've got one kiosk set up, but you see a lot of visitors coming, you might want to take 1 or 2 at the reception already, or before deploying the kiosk experience, you want to leverage the receptionist to make the check-ins. All of this can be done also via this dashboard, and making sure that all the experiences, however the visitor checks in, is registered, whatever the information on the visitor, everything is captured to make sure that your receptionist has a full overview of everything. So that's what I wanted to show you in terms of the dashboard for visitor management. And now what we want to show you is I'll hand it back over to Siam to go through specifics on kiosk, on really how understanding how this can be set up and how you can start implementing this and using this in your organization.
Yes, thank you, Elizabeth. Hold on, because I was also answering in the chat at the same time. Okay, so before I get into the configuration and just showing you how to configure that kiosk experience, a couple of things that I want to make sure is clear for this whole group. First thing, what we mean by kiosk. Kiosk to us is any screen running on a browser. So whether it's a large screen, whether it's a computer even, I just did the demo, anything that has a browser to us is a kiosk, and that's what we mean by kiosk. Our portal that I just demoed is a web app, and it runs on a browser, and it therefore requires to be turned, for the device to be turned into kiosk mode. We know Microsoft provides that, Apple, Samsung, but it is up to the admin to actually turn their kiosk into a kiosk mode, so that the URL doesn't appear for the user, for the viewer, that they can't just switch tabs. So that's one thing to consider also while deploying your kiosks. The kiosks page should not time out. We do have a property that pings the instance before it expires, so that it doesn't have that extend message. So this is something also that is available in the product. We also introduce a property to revert back to the homepage after a certain amount of time of being inactive. So if somebody uses, the check-in feature and just halfway through just goes away, after a certain amount of time, it will revert back to the homepage. By default, I think this property is set to around 70 seconds, but it is obviously configurable. The experience, especially for configuration, it's important to understand that the experience is split across 2 applications. In this case, Workplace Services Kiosk contains everything around the homepage, the buttons, the images, the logos. So that is handled by the application, and then everything related to the flow, the different step for registration, the different checkout steps, also all of that is handled in the visitor management application. So in order to replicate this, you need to have both applications, Workplace Services Kiosk and visitor management, and configuration is across both also. And last thing I wanted to make sure was clear for everyone is the new roles that we introduced with this kiosk experience. We have 3 roles. So we have the kiosk admin. Kiosk admin is the one who actually configures the experience, the kiosk experience. We have a new role called kiosk operator, and this is the person who will bind the configuration with a physical kiosk. We'll just do that together in just a moment. And then the last role is the kiosk viewer, and the kiosk viewer is anyone who actually consumes the experience from the kiosk. I will be sharing my screen again, Elizabeth.
Yep, go ahead.
Right. Desktop share. So I'm going back on the back end now. I did mention the ability, the new role, the kiosk operator role. So let me exactly show what I meant by that. So this is the state of the kiosk once it has been linked to a physical kiosk. But this needs to be done. So let's just go back to another role. So we'll, if it collaborates with me, let me refresh. Okay, it won't collaborate with me. Nice. Let me do it from here. So let's go on the kiosk portal. So this is the step where this would be the initial step for the operator. The operator just tries to access the kiosk portal from a specific device. And then they need to bind a kiosk with a device. So here I have several configurations that are from my instance with different features potentially. Maybe there's just check-in, maybe there's just checkout, maybe there's just there's no registration flow, for instance. And later on, as we enhance and we add more capabilities, mapping, for instance, so those versions would have, those configurations would have different features. So now let's say I'm in the lobby and I need to define which kiosk, which configuration I want on this specific kiosk. So that's the first step. Selecting and then saving, and this is how we bind the experience, and this is how we get to that state. So that's the role for the operator role. That's what they do, and then the viewer will then access the configuration. So in order to configure that page, that home page, we need to go into the kiosk management application. And there are a few things that we want to create. So first, we want to make sure we have our list of kiosks. Here we have the default kiosk, for instance, that is shipped out of the box, the default kiosk configuration, just so that you can copy from it also. You can see that it has also a device ID just because it is linked to this device here. So this one is already fully configured. I did create, just for demo purposes, second floor kiosk, third floor kiosk. You could have as many as needed. That's the first step. It's to have all of your kiosks created. But then if we get into the details of that configuration, few things are needed. First is the homepage configuration. We'll get right to it right after. Second is the manage by field, and that would be the operator who is allowed to actually access this kiosk from this list here to bind it, to link it to a physical kiosk. Not everybody should have access to this. If an operator is in AMS, we're not going to want to show them kiosks that belong to another campus for another region. So this is how you control which operator sees what kiosk, but in the manage by field. Also, we're going to give it a location. It can be a space, but it can also be a building or a floor. So this is where we want to add the location. We also want to define a default language. And this here will show you all of the languages that are available in the instance. but we do want to show one by default. This is showing that it's linked to a device. You can actually unlink it. Let's say the device was lost, for instance. We can actually unlink it from this page. And then last alive, last time it was active. That's why we received an active message from the device also. So that's for the kiosk configuration. That's just creating the record, and this kiosk configuration exists. It does then add the different modules. So what features do we want in there? So in this case, we want the default check-in and we want checkout. This is also where we're gonna add this. If we continue, I talked about the homepage. So this is, again, this one is shipped out of the box, but this is also something that we want to configure. So in this case, we want to have a title, we want to say welcome, but again, that can be customizable, configurable, the text that people will see, the logo, and also the background image. By background image, I mean this purple image that we have all around here. All of that is configurable from the homepage, which can be reused on all of your kiosks if it makes sense. You can only have one if that's what makes sense. And then the modules. The modules are the buttons, but also those buttons link to actual features. So in this case, we have a button that says check-in. If I rename my button here and I say check-in 2, for instance, it will update. I'll show you right after. It will update my button on the portal, and then it links to an actual feature, and that's the default kiosk check-in flow. And let's update this, and that takes me actually to visitor. And this is when we start getting into visitor management, because if I get into this, it's just telling me, please go to this table here and retrieve this flow. All right. And this is actually in our visitor management experience. So this is when I explained earlier, part of the configuration is in kiosk and the other part is in visitor management. So now that we have our page, we have our buttons, we have our images, everything. Now we're pointing to visitor management. So we now need to move on to our visitor management application. And out of the box, again, we have introduced 2 new flows, the check-in flow and the checkout flow. Both are very similar. We'll start with the check-in, and it's the exact same. So this is what we're shipping out of the box, just so that you can reuse and copy or customize. So the default check-in is what we use today. The first step here, and that's one of the mandatory ones. You can see we only have 2 mandatory ones, meaning that everything in between is not, is the authentication page configuration. So if we open that record, essentially, this is where you list which authentication method you allow. If you only want to go with passcode and name, this is where you configure it. You just have 2 records. If you want to do all 4, you do all 4. This is where this is being managed. The second is the self-registration page configuration. Again, somebody asked in the chat if it was a mandatory step. It is not, as you can see. This can be removed, but by default, we're shipping that configuration. It does link to a record producer. This is the record producer that you can edit directly. So you can either add your own or edit this one directly from this table. So if we scroll down, you all have all the questions here, all the variables that you can edit or add new ones. It will, for now, it will, and it's a choice on our part. It is a step-by-step experience. So if you add an extra step, it will be also read as an extra step. For now, there's no configuration to see all of the forms, all of the questions on just one single form. We wanted to make it easier for the user to go step by step. If you think that this is something that is worth changing and you would rather have just one page with all of the questions, please say so in the chat, because this is something that we're also considering. So that's for the self-registration step that is configurable here, and then the acknowledgement, the policies one. So this is not exactly where you configure policies. Here it is just the page. So what's the title going to be, and that's it. The policies are configured directly in the visitor policies section, which existed prior to kiosks that are part of visitor management. So if I click on visitor policies, I can create as many as needed. And the way I'm going to bind my visitor policy with my kiosk is through this location field that is here. And this is how I make sure that this gets displayed on my kiosk. Going back to my flow, so check-in flow. So that's my acknowledgement page. And then last is the summary page. So this one here, there's no configuration. It's just going to retrieve either the information from the pre-registration or from the self-registration. And it's just going to show them for confirmation. So it's just retrieving information, no configuration. And then the M page with the different steps. So in our experience, we just had 3. It says host is on their way, collect your visitor badge with extra information, and don't forget to check out when you leave. Those again are configurable based on the policies you have within your company. You can have more than 3 also, and the order, which one you want to see first, the order is manageable here. So that's the overview. Checkout works the exact same way. So if we go into the checkout flow, it's the same steps really. So you reuse, it's just a simpler version, but it's the same steps and it works the exact same way. Last thing I want to call out that is important also for configuration is the host aspect. If you recall earlier when I did the check-in, I did have a list of hosts during the self-registration, and this is showing employee names. We're not showing all of your employee base. We're basing this list on the workplace profiles and the employees that are assigned to that campus, the campus where the kiosk is. So this is how you populate that that table, where you need to assign users to this specific campus in order to see the host in the experience. That's it for the configuration. This is the big steps of how to configure kiosk. Elizabeth, maybe you want to pull out the list for the future enhancements, because we know this is our first release for kiosk. So we're planning a lot of things in the future releases. First is interactive maps and wayfinding. So this is one of the features that are coming, that is coming on the kiosk next. We are also looking at enhancing our existing experience for visitor. So checking using QR codes. Today it is only passcode, name, phone number, etc. We're looking at now enhancing that using the front camera of the device, if it exists, to scan a QR code for check-in to make it even easier on visitors. We're also looking at introducing the ability to capture visitor photos during the check-in process, so that it can be stored and that can be kept for the admins. And there's this big piece about automating the badge generation and printing. Today, this is a customization. We do know that some of our customers already do it. The idea is to productize it and have it available out of the box, generating a template for the badge and automatically processing with the printing once check-in is complete. And then a couple things for later, ability for guests to retrieve Wi-Fi information, for instance. And also we're looking into the concept of virtual reception. And this is to contact another reception outside of normal office hours directly from the kiosk. This is further away on the roadmap. Our priorities are the first four that should be in our future close releases. That's it for me. Elizabeth, if you want to take
it's great. We've got a lot of interaction, a lot of Q&A. So great to see. If we don't get the chance to take a look at every single question, do be reassured we'll get back to you over email, either to ask for additional information to really understand the use case you're sharing, or to really provide answers to some of these questions. So what I do want to share is we went over now the visitor management process, really understanding the kiosk, which is one of our latest capabilities, really understanding this is the first version that we're delivering of a kiosk experience really focused on that visitor management process of providing them with that self-service to be able to come in, remove some of the friction from the reception by providing them the option to check in, check out, or self-register. We do plan, as Siam mentioned, a lot of enhancements on this. So as a follow-up to this webinar, what I really want to point you to in the direction of is really some of our documentation. So the product docs will really help you understand how to configure some of these items we went through today in terms of the records of how those get created, the tables which are used to store the information. We also have on community a lot of information. This is mostly around what gets released, every single release we have. Just as a recap, WSD is a store-based application. We release 4 times a year. There's a lot of innovation that goes into each of those releases. So I would recommend looking at the community on a quarterly basis. So this could be February, May, August, and November, where we have a lot of new information put out there. So in the next releases, you'll see a lot around kiosk. And so you'll be able to get the detail in those community blogs. Last but not least, Now Create, we have a lot of content out there. It can also help you get started with visitor management. If that's not something you've implemented today, you can use some of those resources to get started. And one thing I also do want to point out is if you have started your journey, if you're about to start your journey, if you're evaluating the journey with visitor management, we do really appreciate your input. So either reach out to us with some of the use cases or challenges you're facing, but also know that we have an external portal idea where you can go and submit ideas of ways that we can enhance items in terms of features, capabilities that should be added to our backlog, something that we should look into. We do really ask you to share those inputs. This helps us build a product, but also helps facilitate the way that other customers also might be able to implement in an easier way.